This day in sports history.
Hey, I'm golf broadcaster Matt Adams. The updated and expanded second edition of my book, The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments, is now available. Readers can expect to march with Arnie's Army at the 1960 U.S. Open, relive Jack Nicklaus's remarkable 1986 Masters win, and be amazed by the Tiger Slam. The Golf Round I'll Never Forget, Golf's Biggest Stars Recall Their Finest Moments. Pick it up where fine books are sold, including BarnesandNoble.com and Amazon.com.
Hey, and welcome back to This Day in Sports History, a member of the Sports History Network, your source for all things sports history. You can find more info and more podcasts at sportshistorynetwork.com. This is your host, Steve White. I've got the keys to the time machine thingy, and it's time to take a loop around sports history. It's August 18th, and on this day in 1983, it was the resumption of the pine tar game. The first 8.5 innings of this infamous game were played back on July 24th, and if you are any sort of baseball fan, then you probably know exactly what happened on that day, but to recap real quickly, Kansas City Royals at New York, Yankees up 4-3 in the 8th when Royals third baseman George Brett came to the plate with 2 outs and a man on first. Brett hit a Goose Gossage fastball deep into the right field seats to give KC the 5-4 lead. But Yankees manager Billy Martin protested to umpire Tim McClellan that the pine tar on the bat exceeded the legal limit, going past the trademark or more than 18 inches up the bat. Now, the Yankees had been stung by this same rule 8 years earlier. Back in 1975, Yankee catcher Thurman Munson had been called out for the same rules infraction after getting an RBI single in a game against Minnesota. No change had been made to the rules, so they had a valid argument. The umpires called Brett out. Game over, Yankees win. And that's when Brett exploded out of the dugout, screaming, waving his arms, tobacco juice flying out of his mouth, needing to be physically restrained. Well, the Royals protested to the league office, and American League President Lee MacPhail said that Brett's bat did not violate the spirit of the rule. Therefore, the 2-run home run should count. He went on to say that the game needed to be resumed with 2 outs in the 8th, and the Royals leading 5-4. The two teams were not scheduled to face each other the rest of the season, so instead, August 18th was chosen since it was an off day for both teams. So, here we are. Well, obviously the Yankees were not happy. They had to open the ballpark for what would more than likely be a 4-out game. The Yankees were going to charge people $2.50 to see the ending, but after fan protests, a court ruled against that, and so the Yankees said anybody with a ticket stub from July 24th would be allowed in. The lineups were a little different. Brett was suspended for his outburst. Gaylord Perry was also suspended for the resumption because of his role trying to hide the bat, along with Royals manager Dick Hauser and coach Rocky Colavito. Yankees manager Billy Martin was in full protest mode, and he did not like the idea of this resumption of the game, obviously. He thought it was ludicrous and decided to heap on more ludicrousness. He put the left-handed Don Mattingly at second base. For the uninitiated, you would never put a left-handed person at second, short, or third because of the pivot that the player would have to make to throw the ball to first base. And he put pitcher Ron Guidry in center field. On the mound was George Frazier. Before throwing a pitch to Hal McRae, though, Frazier threw to Ken Griffey at first, who touched the bag, saying that George Brett did not touch first. The first base ump signaled, safe. The ball went to second base, safe. To third, safe. This was a new umpiring crew for the restart, but the league office had anticipated this maneuver by the Yankees and Martin. When Martin came out to protest, an affidavit signed by the original crew said that Brett and Washington had touched all the bags. Protest ended, game resumed. Frazier then proceeded to strike out Hal McRae for the third out. The Yankees went quietly in the bottom half of the inning with Mattingly flying out to center, ending a 25-game hitting streak. Roy Smalley flew out to left, and Oscar Gamble grounded out to second. And finally, the Pine Tar bat game was finished, with the Royals winning, officially, 5-4. On this day in 1967, it was another ugly beanball incident that came close to being the second fatality in a Major League Baseball game. So it was just 2 days ago that I talked about the Ray Chapman tragedy when he was hit in the head with a pitch and died 12 hours later. Well, on this day, 47 years later, it nearly happened again. The Boston Red Sox were playing at home at Fenway, hosting the California Angels. Tony Conigliaro was a 22-year-old star in the making. By this point in his career, he'd already hit 100 homers, becoming the youngest American leaguer to do that. In fact, he'd homered in his very first at-bat at Fenway, sending one over the Green Monster in left. But he'd been mired in a slump in the last week, picking up only one hit in 23 at-bats. He felt a little better when he singled off Angels starter Jack Hamilton in the second inning. Stepping up to the plate in the fourth with 2 outs, he just wanted to get back in the groove. His parents and brother were in the stands watching. That wasn't unusual. The Conigliaros were Bostonians. Tony was a hometown hero. He wanted to make everybody proud. There was a nice crowd at Fenway on this night, a little over 31,000. But one knucklehead brought a smoke bomb with him, and before Hamilton could deliver the first pitch to Tony, that knucklehead threw that smoke bomb onto the field, smoke going everywhere. Play was stopped, and it took about 10 minutes before the smoke bomb could be removed and the smoke cleared. Finally, play was ready to resume. But Conigliaro had a thought right before Jack went into his windup. In that 10-minute span, Jack had not thrown a ball, hadn't kept his arm warm, hadn't thrown a couple of warm-up pitches prior to Tony stepping back into the box. Conigliaro thought to himself, I wonder if that delay caused his arm to stiffen. Hamilton delivered, and the ball sailed off target. Conigliaro saw it, tried to dodge it, but it looked like the ball was magnetized and Tony's head was made of metal, attracting it to him. He knew before it hit him that it was going to hurt, and it did. Hamilton's errant fastball hit Conigliaro's left cheekbone, dislocating his jaw and damaging his left eye. He crumpled to the dirt. He says he never lost consciousness, but kinda wishes he had. The pain was excruciating. The swelling in his mouth was making it tough to breathe. He had the thought that he was going to die right there at home plate of Fenway Park in front of 31,000, including his parents and his brother. Fenway became eerily silent. He was stretchered off the field and taken to the nearest hospital. Things looked so bad for him at the hospital that a priest was brought into his room and issued last rites to Tony. A doctor said if the ball had been 2 inches higher, it would have killed him. He lived, but there was a major concern about whether he'd lose his eyesight. The retina in his left eye was badly damaged. Doctors told him he would never play baseball again, and indeed it looked that way. He missed the rest of the 1967 season, a season in which the Red Sox impossible dream season ended in defeat in 7 games in the World Series. He would also miss the entire 1968 season. He did not return to baseball until April 8, 1969, 20 months after the injury. He managed to hit .255 with 20 homers that season and was named Comeback Player of the Year as a 24-year-old. In 1970, it looked like he was definitely on the rise again with 36 home runs and 116 RBI. But in 1971, things went south for him. His eyesight deteriorated quickly, and he retired at the age of 26. He tried to come back in the 75 season, but only appeared as a DH in 21 games, hitting .123 with 2 homers. The pitch also affected Hamilton. His battery mate on this night, Buck Rogers, said Hamilton was never the same. He had not been a wild pitcher in his career. He hit only 13 batters in the 611 innings he pitched in his career. But in order to be an effective pitcher, you need to be able to pitch inside, move a batter off the plate. And Rogers said that after hitting Conigliaro on this night, Hamilton was just unable to pitch inside. He did pitch 61 more games, and he never hit another batter. He retired after the 1969 season. And what about the Red Sox? Well, there's a good chance the curse of the Bambino could have been put to rest in 1967. After Tony's injury, 4 men replaced him in the lineup. In 178 bats between those 4, they collectively hit 197 with just 4 home runs and 17 RBI. They lost in 7 games to the St. Louis Cardinals in the World Series, with the men filling in for Conigliaro ineffective at the plate in the series. And what if the fan had not thrown that smoke bomb on the field? What if Hamilton had thrown some warm-up pitches in that interim period? What if Conigliaro could have ducked a little quicker? Not only may the Red Sox have won the World Series in '67, but Tony's name may have been right up there with the greatest home run hitters of all time. On this day in 1992, Boston Celtic great Larry Bird announced his retirement. Ultimately, it was back pain that led to his decision. Bird had just won gold as a member of the Dream Team in Barcelona, but said he'd been in constant pain, and enough was enough. Over his 13-year NBA career, he led the Celtics to 3 championships. He was a 3-time league MVP and a 12-time All-Star. He scored 21,791 points for an average of 24.3 a game. And the rivalry that he and Magic Johnson established elevated a moribund NBA to an exciting brand of must-watch TV. And on this day in 2002, it was another unlikely winner of the PGA Championship. Yesterday, I mentioned Shawn Michaels' shocking PGA Championship win in 2003. Well, the year before, former car stereo salesman Rich Beem won the PGA Championship. This edition played at Hazeltine in Chaska, Minnesota. One of the differences between McKeel and Beem, though, is that Beem had actually won on tour prior to this. In fact, just 2 weeks prior to his win on this day, Beem had won the international tournament that used the modified Stableford scoring system and had cashed a $1.8 million check. So he was riding a nice little wave of confidence coming into this one. And prior to this week, though, he was better known as the author of Blood, Sweat, and Tease, a walk on the wild side of the PGA Tour, which was a book about his rookie year on tour. Side note, I've got that book, and I read it decades ago. It's hilarious, and it's a must-read for any serious or not-so-serious golfer. So anyway, Beem's 66 on Friday vaulted him to the top of the leaderboard, but a 72 on Saturday slipped him to second, 3 shots back of Justin Leonard to start the final round. Whereas John Daly kicked field goals with the Indianapolis Colts the night before he won, Beem drank 2 beers and took a sleeping tablet and slept for 10 hours, and then came out and played a great round. Leonard fell away pretty early, but Tiger Woods, playing in the group just in front, was on the prowl. Beem made eagle at 13 to give himself a 3-shot lead over Tiger, but Tiger birdied the final 4 holes and was the leader in the clubhouse at 9 under. But Beem had the luxury of 3-putting the final green, and he still won by a shot to win the PGA Championship. It was Beem's first and only major, and his last win on the PGA Tour. And time now for today's non-sports Did You Know? So, the Millennium Falcon from Star Wars has a pretty unique design. Well, did you know that George Lucas got the idea by looking at a hamburger that had a bite taken out of it, with the cockpit being an olive on a toothpick on the side? Look it up. It's true. That's all for today. Check back in tomorrow for another edition of This Day in Sports History. This has been an original Thrive Suite production.
Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, a.k.a. the Football History Dude, and I hope that you enjoyed this recent episode presented by the Sports History Network and were able to learn some good old-fashioned sports history knowledge nuggets. I started the Sports History Network back in 2020 with the mission to help podcasters find a community of like-minded sports history nerds, as well as helping aspiring podcasters to start their own shows. We have a little bit over 30 shows on the network right now covering all sorts of sports history, but as far as I'm concerned, We're just at the toothpick in the ocean moment, that can't even figure it out because there's so much more coming. We wanted to create the ultimate headquarters for sports yesteryear, starting with Podcast Network and our website, but we're going to continue to move into other mediums as well. And here's the cool part, because we want you to be part of our team. So if you're interested in starting your own podcast, or maybe being a guest on one of our shows, or who knows, maybe even writing an article for us over on the website. Seriously, all you gotta do is reach out to us on the contact page over at sportshistorynetwork.com. You can be as technologically savvy as a Neanderthal tapping on a stone trying to figure out this whole hieroglyphics thing back in the day. Again, it doesn't matter, because even if you don't understand the whole podcast space, we have a production team that can pretty much help you out with doing everything. All you gotta do, head over to sportshistorynetwork.com, head to the contact page, fill it out. That message goes right to me, and I'll reach out to you as soon as I can. But for now, dude, I'm through if you're through.